All right, let's talk about something that's actually more important than you may think, and that's how you freeze something. So the first tip is to freeze things in individual sizes. That way, when you want to pull something out to cook or eat, you don't have to thaw a huge 10-pound bag of chicken when really you just want 1 or 2 pieces. Now, you can still have all of that chicken in one big bag, but you need to know that when you freeze something, if they're touching each other, they will probably stick to each other and freeze together and be kind of hard to separate. So one way to do that is to either initially freeze them separately, or when you have it in that bag together, make sure that they're separate and not touching. Maybe lay it flat while you're doing this step. And then after they've frozen together, or sorry, not together, after they've frozen separately some, then you can combine them, they can touch all they want. So, let's talk about what you're going to freeze things in. The Ziploc bag is a great thing to freeze things in, whether that be solids or liquids. It does a great job. Now you want to get the freezer variety, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, it's a little bit thicker of plastic, and that helps protect it from the sharp, pokey edges that often come from hard, frozen things. So it prevents it from getting punctured. It's also been designed to not degrade over time, a little more so than the refrigerator version or the pantry version, even though they're the same. Refrigerator and pantry, that is. So the freezer version won't degrade, and it's a little thicker plastic, so it won't get punctured as easily. So when you're storing things in Ziploc bags, you want to try and get all of the air out of there as possible. Why is that, you might ask? Because the freezer burn. Freezer burn is the enemy of the freezer, and it is one of the biggest things that can cause you to have to throw out some of your frozen food. So what is freezer burn? So freezer burn is when the outer layer of the food is exposed to air, and the moisture on that outer layer actually evaporates off of the food, and then a lot of times it'll freeze right back onto the food, but in the form of water crystals. And so when you open your freezer and you see a bunch of white crystals on your food, that is freezer burn, and it will cause the texture of your food to be really bad. If it's only a little bit of freezer burn, you can probably get away with it, but once you get a lot of freezer burn, you're not going to want to eat that food. So how do you combat freezer burn? Well, the first thing is to get as much air possible out of whatever it is you're freezing in. So if you're using a Ziploc bag, ideally you use something that's vacuum sealed. You can buy a whole vacuum sealer, it sucks the air out for you. That will do the best job. But the poor man's version is to just get a Ziploc bag, plop in what you want, and you can even just suck out the air. Now, if you've got raw meat in there with juices, don't suck that into your mouth, but try and suck out as much air as possible. Another way is to use the water trick. Okay, I'm going to show you a little trick how to get a vacuum seal without actually needing a fancy vacuum sealer. So open your Ziploc bag, and we're going to use some blueberries as an example. So just close up that bag most of the way. And then I've got a bowl of water here. You're just going to submerge that bag into the bowl of water. And what that water will do is it will force the air out of the bag. And then when it gets to the very top, you'll want to use your fingers to zip the last part closed. Now, this isn't going to give you as good of a vacuum seal as the sealer will, but it gives you a pretty decent one. Now, if we're going to actually freeze these blueberries, I'd recommend spreading them out in a thin layer instead of having them all clumped together like this. But that's how you vacuum seal with just a Ziploc and a bowl of water. Now, if you're going to be sealing inside of some Tupperware, use the smallest Tupperware that you can that will still fit what you need. Now, you want to keep in mind, whether it be Tupperware or Ziploc, liquids will expand in the freezer. So you want to make sure you leave a little bit of headroom, a little bit of space, so that can expand and it doesn't bust open. Now, in general, we advise that, especially if you're using Ziploc bags, freeze things flat like this. And after they've gotten frozen, you can then store them vertically so you can easily see and sort your various food items. So if you've got a pound of ground meat that you've cooked, just throw it in the bag, flatten it out into a nice even layer, and you can use a pan or plate underneath if you need some extra support. Slide that into your freezer, and then the next day you can just take it and move it around and organize it how you want.